Hi guys, this is Elisa with Fusion DIY. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you for coming back and joining me. In today's video, I'm working on 3 different projects and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time describing them. Let's get right into the video and I'll catch up with you at the end. For project 1, I picked up this picture frame at a yard sale and I'm painting it with Behr paint that I picked up at the Home Depot. I believe it was a color sample that someone returned because they did not want it or need it or like it. And it's a vanilla, and 1 coat was all that I needed for this picture frame. It had excellent coverage. Once I finished painting the picture frame, I took my heat gun and I dried the paint. If you don't have a heat gun, a hair dryer would work too. The heat gun just makes it a little bit faster. Once I finished drying the frame, I then took some Waverly wax and I watered it down a bit and I gave the picture frame a coat of wax. Now, if you don't like a more distressed or more antique look, you could have skipped this step, but I really wanted to tone down a little bit of the white in the frame, and so the Waverly wax does a really good job at that. Now, in an effort to use some of the leftover transfers in my stash, I pulled this transfer out and I thought that it would look beautiful against the white picture frame because there is some of the creamy yellow or creamy white in the roses that I thought would match perfectly with the paint. So now I'm taking the Kindest Regards stamp, and this is actually the first time I'm using this stamp, and I really do love this stamp a lot. I've seen other crafters use it, and so I purchased one for myself. Now since this is the first time I'm using it, I'm going over it with a 220 grit sandpaper before I stamp onto the paper. Now I'm going to lay down the stamp, and while I hold it with one hand, I'm going to rub with the other, and it made a perfect impression on the page where I'm going to put my transfer. So then I went ahead and dried the ink just to make sure that it wouldn't smear when I put the transfer on it. And this is where the project went a little haywire. I put the transfer on top of the Kindest Regard stamp, and once I removed the vellum from the transfer, it looked beautiful, but as I started to look a little bit closer, you could actually see the Kindest Regard stamp coming through the transfer. So I know that the transfers are very thin, but I never anticipated that you would see that. So if you look closely, you can actually see the words coming through from underneath the transfer. I burnished it anyway, and the more that I looked at it, the more that it just really bothered me that the words were coming through from underneath the transfer. So at this point, I really wasn't sure what I should do. And in the end, I decided that I wasn't going to keep that transfer with the wording on it because it just looked not right. And you can see it here. So then I decided that I would go back into my stash and I would try to find another transfer that I could use. So I needed to paint a background for it, and using the same color of Behr paint that I used on the picture frame, I am using here on the background. So I gave it one coat of this pretty vanilla, and then I dried it with my heat gun. And once it was dry, I gave it a second coat of paint. I dug around in my stash and I found another rose pattern that I really liked, and I decided to try this one. A transfer will transform your project into a plain, boring piece of artwork into something that is absolutely beautiful. And I am so grateful to the IOD sisters that they take so much time and put so much care and effort into the details of their transfers. Roses happen to be my favorite flower, and these roses are just beautiful. The lines are very crisp and the detail is really wonderful. And so I really enjoyed putting this transfer onto this backing. When it was done, I put it into the frame, and here it is in my booth. I think this turned out beautiful. For project 2, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to install a hanger on the back of this picture frame so that the new owner has the option of either hanging the picture or using the stand on the back of the frame to stand it up. So now I'm going to take the piece and I am going to hammer it into the back of the picture frame, just making sure that it's centered. Now I have to tell you that this tack hammer that I'm using actually belonged to my dad. My dad was a furniture refinisher and repairer, and he did all kinds of work on antiques. and I was very fortunate to be able to inherit some of his tools, and this is one of the pieces that I particularly enjoy using, and I think of him whenever I use it. Okay, so now that that's done, I am going to take some IOD clay, and I am going to also take my IOD mold, and I am going to pull out the jumping bunny, and which set that's with, I just don't remember at this point. But you can see that the first thing I'm doing is taking some baking soda, and I'm going to dust the mold that I'm going to use, which will help the clay to come out of the mold a whole lot easier. And then I cut a piece of drop cloth, and I glued the drop cloth to the back of the glass that was in the picture frame. I'm not going to put glass in front of the picture frame. I'm simply going to leave that open. So this works as a nice backdrop. Now that that's done, I'm going to take the bunny mold out, and I am going to put the bunny into the picture frame, and I'm going to take a little bit of my Tight Bond glue, and I'm going to spread it out on the bunny, and I will then adhere the bunny to the fabric. Unfortunately, I didn't get any pictures of me going over it with the dark wax, but here it is in my booth. For project 3, I just wanted to show you guys something that has been selling so well for me in my booth and how I make them. And so this is something that I start with, and this is one of those little bean crocks. You've seen them, and you see them in yard sales and flea markets all the time. What I'm doing is I'm going to give it a textured paint finish, so I'm taking some Waverly chalk paint in the color Mineral and added some baking soda to it, and that will give this paint a little bit more of a texture, and it makes the little pot look like it's got a concrete finish. So now I'm going to give the pot 2 coats of this paint and baking soda mixture. Once the paint dried, I didn't have the opportunity to turn the camera on. I completely forgot. But I used this transfer. Again, this is an IOD transfer, and I think this just fits the pot perfectly. And now I'm taking a piece of foam and I'm placing it into the little pot, and I'm grabbing some of the lavender sprigs that you can get at Walmart, and I'm going to cut them and I'm going to put them into the pot. Now I know that this seems like a very simple project, but I have to tell you that I have sold so many of these in my booth, and I don't sell them for a lot of money. They're usually under $10, but you know, something small like this is perfect for someone to give a gift to a coworker, or if they just want something as a pick-me-up for a friend. This is just such a great little thing to give. Once I've got all of the lavender in place, then I'm going to go back and get some Spanish moss, and I'm simply going to fill in the empty spaces, and anywhere that you could see any of the foam, I'm going to cover it with the Spanish moss. It gives it kind of like a wispy feel to it, and it just finishes the project off in such a nice way. And here's the finished project. So what did you think of those projects? I happen to like the bunny, and I had one in my booth once before and it sold very quickly. So I enjoyed making the other one, and I don't know, I also think that the rose in the round frame kind of came out pretty. I like that one as well. I have to apologize because I've been dealing with a migraine all day, and so I'm just not at the top of my game today. But tomorrow is another day, and hopefully this migraine will be gone. Anyway, this coming week I am going to be working on moving into my new booth, which is very exciting. As many of you know, the Pickers Junction is going to be moving their business. The new address for Pickers Junction will be 141 East Broad Street in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. The shop isn't open yet, but I'll definitely keep you posted and let you know. In next week's video, I think you're going to see me moving out of one booth and moving into another, and the transformation that takes place with this area that we're going to be moving into. I have a wonderful spot, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. So I hope to see you next week, and in the meantime, have an awesome week, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.